Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 26 series, Rescue the Rockies. And we are finally, in this episode, going to get the 2029 to 2030 offseason really moving along. You can see here that we have made one trade since the end of the last episode. As some of you noted in the comments to the last episode, was pretty clear that this was a direction that I was going to be going. But we got an interesting package. We had to give up two valuable players to make it happen. The cornerstone of what we got back, of course, is the 26-year-old Andrew Painter. You can see I've moved him into a starting pitching position, and his stuff not nearly as intimidating as we thought it might be when he was a reliever. But still think he could be a pretty solid pitcher for us going forward. His career in this universe hasn't really progressed as well as I've seen it in some other OOTP universes. He's going to be 27 years old at the start of next season. Still has a lot of untapped potential, which isn't great to see at that kind of age. And over the course of parts of 4 seasons in the majors at this point, he's had an 89 ERA plus and a 106 FIP minus, so he's been a below average, albeit slightly above replacement level pitcher over the course of his career so far. But he is young, he is cost effective, he does have extreme ground ball tendencies, and we think he can still potentially do a pretty good job keeping the ball in the ballpark in Colorado. So I think he is definitely worth bringing on board. And the other thing is that given he's had limited major league success over his 4 major league seasons, and he was actually cut last year and picked up off the waiver wire by the Mets, he doesn't have an extremely inflated view of himself right now. And so we are really rolling the dice completely on Mr. Painter, and he's willing to think about a 10-year contract for $36.5 million that'll take him into his mid-30s if he signs it. We'll be paying more than the minimum for him this upcoming season, and then likely a bit more in some of his early arbitration-eligible years than he'd be making. But the contract peaks at about $5 million a year at the end of it. If he really becomes a useful starting pitcher for us, this could be a very important contract for this Rockies franchise, given that as we sit here on November 29th, we've got the number 25 payroll in baseball. We've got very mediocre 59 fan interest, and we've got pathetic fan loyalty. If you had told me that we'd be in this disappointing a financial situation 5 years into the 5 years into this series after making the playoffs 4 straight seasons, definitely would have shocked me. Clearly the downgrade to the pathetic fan loyalty following that first season when we took over the Rockies in the middle of the year has derailed our hopes that we might be able to really be working with a better budget than we are today. But if we can get Painter signed, and if he becomes a good, solid major league starter, he'll be worth what we're paying him. If he becomes a 2 or a 3 starter, which is certainly possible, it could be great value for us. We also picked up $2.5 million in cash, which helps us a little bit. You've probably, if you were looking closely, would have noticed that we used a little bit of that money to, at least for the time being, get our scouting and player development a little higher than they were a year ago, and both well above baseline, particularly the player development budget. It's always kind of a double-edged sword. I love getting the little bit of money, or in some cases a lot of money, to help us in the next season. But when we spend that money, it just increases the chances that we're going to lose money on the year. And in theory makes it somewhat less likely that we're going to get an expanded budget the season after that. But get addicted to the crack. Sometimes it's hard to get off, and we took the money that we could get in this trade. Also got 3 players. 2 aren't particularly interesting. 24-year-old center fielder Matthew Priest talked a lot in comments to recent episodes about what we might have in center field next year with the almost certain departure of Brenton Doyle. Priest gives us a guy who's capable of playing a competent defensive center field and has a ton of speed. The issue is he really doesn't have a major league bat, and I don't know that he ever will. He's a 24-year-old who's never played above A ball, so just kind of a body. And I think you could say the same thing about the 23-year-old center fielder Andres Lira. Not as good defensively, not as good on the base paths, but potentially a somewhat more interesting bat with major league average contact that could be better than that, and gap power that we think could also be pretty solid. But he's a 23-year-old who hasn't played above A ball either. Think these guys in a best case scenario, maybe a Priest or a Lara ends up a useful 4th or 5th outfielder for us down the line. But given the guys we gave up, we were able to get more than Painter in the trade, so we happily took them. The guy that we're second most interested behind Painter is a 23-year-old reliever, Bill Douglas. Got an outstanding fastball. Think that his stuff could be exceptional. The movement and control both pretty average. Just a 2-pitch arsenal, only a 35 stamina. So it looks like if he comes close to reaching his full potential, he could be a useful right-handed middle or long reliever out of the bullpen for us. Another guy who hasn't progressed incredibly quickly through the Mets system, though. He's going to be 24 before next season and has not played above A ball, but he's been very productive last year in his first year of professional experience in both rookie ball and A ball for the Mets organization. Now, to pick up this package, we did have to get rid of Jared Cerna. We talked in previous episodes about him being set to make about $4 million next year. His offense has declined each of the last couple of seasons, and we really viewed him as a potential utility guy for us next year. The bat looks average-ish at best. He is versatile defensively, decent speed, but with the money he was starting to make, coming off of a rough year, heading into his late 20s, we were willing to include him in the deal. And then gave up another guy who's very similar in terms of his defensive versatility. He can play a lot of defensive positions at a pretty good level, has good speed, a decent bunter. Carlos Renzullo. The question is what his bat is going to be. He hit well over 300 in both AA and AAA last year. Only 23 years old, doesn't have any major league experience yet. Certainly, if we hadn't made this trade, he would have been in the mix to be a utility player for us next year. But with the opportunity to bring Painter on board, as well as Douglas and the center fielders, kind of had to give up Renzullo along with Cerna, and those were the guys we were most willing to let go. Think that Renzullo can be a pretty interesting contact hitter, but the gap power only average, and we think the home run power and the ability to draw walks are both going to be below average to well below average at the major league level. So do question the bat a bit, although the defensive versatility and the speed are attractive, but not attractive enough to keep us from rolling the dice on trying to bring Mr. Painter on board and then really rolling the dice and trying to sign him to a contract that could become a really helpful asset for us going forward. And with trading Cerna away, we have decided to make offers to all of our arbitration eligible players. That includes bringing back Chandler Simpson for another year. He'll probably be our left fielder, but could be our backup center fielder behind the youngster Mr. West, who we called up in September. And we're also going to try to bring Jaden Hill back as a right-handed reliever for us. Made the QO to Austin Wells. We're not going to risk the QO to Brenton Doyle. As I've talked about in previous episodes, he is looking for $16 million a year over 6 years. I think that conceivably he might accept that $20.3 million qualifying offer, and given how tenuous our financial situation is, don't really want to take that risk. Have gotten a little more feedback from viewers on what we might want to consider doing this season. Kevin Byrne, Avery Shaham, Tyler Beglante all range from just blowing things up entirely to at least considering trading away several players this offseason and starting a hopefully relatively shallow and quick rebuild. Patrick DeBonis and Not My Four-Ply have both at least talked about trading away Gus Nieves, although I don't think either of them is pounding the table to do that right now. It is something that we explored in the last episode. Wasn't overwhelmed by the options we had for him. We can't afford him this year. My thought with Nieves is he's 28 years old, he's durable, he's hit 85 home runs and driven in 234 runs in 2 major league seasons. So even though he was the best player in baseball, or at least in the National League in his first season with us, and he was a productive offensive player who was only slightly above replacement level due to some defensive regression last season, I think the truth for Nieves is somewhere in the middle between these two. But if he does have a big season for us next year, I think that a year from now, if we decided we needed to move on from him, we could probably get similar or more value for him next offseason. I'm not going to rule out doing something with Nieves this offseason, but at this point, I don't think we're going to make another big deal right now. I think we'll wait to see a few more cards as far as who actually becomes a major league free agent. Are there any real interesting international free agents? We could certainly use a top line starting pitcher if there's someone like that out there. And then what does potentially Nieves' value look like as we get closer to the winter meetings in a month and a half? So going to keep an eye on things with him, but not necessarily willing to dump him right away. Undercover Boomer also talked about trading away Pablo Lopez. We've got him at $20 million for next year before the team option that we will almost certainly decline. Saw in the last episode how unless we retain a ton of Lopez's contract, there's really no options to trade him. He did have a WAR of over 3 for us last season, 14-10 record. He's still a good, solid major league pitcher, perhaps a little overvalued at $20 million a year, but he's definitely not killing us if he has a season like he did a year ago. I think with him, I'll continue to explore trade options. Undercover Boomer did suggest maybe attaching a decent prospect to him to try to get him off the books. That's something that I'll continue to explore as well. But I feel like although we are going to be losing Doyle and Wells almost certainly, we were a 90-win team last year, and that 90 wins was actually 2 less than we were expected to have given our play. We've made the playoffs 4 straight seasons. Are we a favorite to win it all next year, particularly with the pending departures of Doyle and Wells? Certainly not. But I think we can certainly compete for a playoff spot again next year. clearly the goal with this team is to be winning championships rather than just competing for a playoff spot. But my thought is kind of a year from now, we'll be out of the Lopez contract. And if we want to trade away Nieves, we can probably get something very similar for him a year from now than we can today. Luzardo, if we exercise the team option, is going to be making less next season or 2 seasons from now than he will this upcoming season. Tovar, if he's healthy, is still a good value at that $23 million with the incredible production we've gotten out of him. So unless I decide I just want to trade everybody away, if Nieves and Lopez are the big levers that I have on the trade market, I think there's an argument to not attach a good prospect or two to get some of Lopez's money off the books. Just let his contract run out, pay him the $2.5 million to buy out the final 2 years of his contract and let him hit free agency. And then we've got the option to move on from Nieves a year from now. Again, this could definitely change as we get closer to the winter meetings. We see who's available in free agency. As I noted, if there's a great international amateur free agent, maybe that makes me rethink things. But right now, I'm trending towards perhaps being somewhat less active in terms of retooling, rebuilding, reshuffling this roster than I know some of you would prefer me to be. Before we do actually start moving forward, 2 final things I wanted to mention. I mentioned how we've been struggling financially and with the fan interest, and it was disappointing that Andrew Painter is allegedly an extremely popular player, and even after we made that trade for him, we didn't get any bump in fan interest. Maybe if we sign him to this big extension, we'll get a little bit then, but who knows. And the other thing that I did want to talk about was have gotten the suggestion to consider trading Mr. Nieves away for prospects, which is definitely something to think about. Just want to kind of show the types of prospect packages that we can get, because this isn't something that I did in the last episode, and several viewers have brought it up, and it's certainly a reasonable idea, but you can see for the most part, giving up a pretty blue chip player, and a lot of the options in the prospect packages are 3 guys who we think are borderline major leaguers if they reach their full potential. Just not a ton of real interesting options. Manny Colon, definitely one of the higher rated guys out there, but he is a pure right-handed reliever. We think he could definitely be a good right-handed reliever, but I don't know that a soon-to-be 25-year-old right-handed reliever is really worth moving on from. Hopefully the best offensive player on our team. So there's just not a ton of real compelling, thrilling options out there. Doesn't mean that there's not going to be a trade to make for Nieves, especially, as I said, 5-6 weeks from now when we get to the winter meetings. But right now, not really feeling it. Probably the most interesting prospect package for Nieves is trading him, as well as Christian Arguelles, who is another guy who could be in the mix to be an important 4th or 5th outfielder for us down the line. Guy who hit over 300 in high A ball and close to 300 when we promoted him at the age of 22 to Double A Hartford in the Eastern League at the end of the season. Decent speed, decent glove, and we think a bat that could be a decent, useful major league bat. So we have to include potentially one of the premier offensive players in baseball in Gus Nieves and a decent prospect in Christian Arguelles to get Yoel Roque, decent-looking right-handed reliever prospect who could potentially be a starting pitcher, but he's fragile physically and has extreme extreme fly ball tendencies and difficulty keeping the ball in the park, so not a perfect fit for Colorado. And then a starting pitching prospect, Carlos Camarillo, only 19 years old. Don't think he's got an incredibly high floor. Does potentially have a 3-4, maybe a 5-pitch arsenal, but we think the control's not going to be great, and he's going to have difficulty keeping the ball in the ballpark. To me, just not a very compelling option for what we'd have to give up. So with that, we will start moving forward through award season, moving towards the beginning of free agency, salary arbitration. I'll continue to explore some trade options. Who knows? Maybe there'll be some interesting offers that come our way as far as the trade market. But I tend to think right now Painter is going to be the move that we make over the next few weeks. And again, we perhaps revisit the likes of Nieves, Lopez, potentially Luzardo in a month and a half when we know what the free agent market looks like, and also have a sense of whether there's any interesting international amateur free agents that we might be able to build around a little differently. And some good news, we've got a couple people signed. Third base coach Rick Guarno is our new third base coach. Brought him over from the Mets organization, where he was the hitting coach for them in AAA, but think that he'll fit in a little bit better with the other coaches on our team. And you can see he's outstanding at in-game running, outstanding with catching defense, outstanding with outfield defense. So someone who could be an asset for us as a coach. Also signed Adolfo Pierre to be our new DSL manager. Excellent with development and outstanding with mechanics. And also a guy that we expect them to have good relationship. Wait, did we not? Oh, I thought we signed him. Oh, we haven't signed him yet. But we think hopefully we'll get him signed. He's on the DSL team. Yeah, he's on the DSL team in Texas. Where are we looking to hire him? We're looking to hire him either in Double A or High A. Can't remember where the offer to him was, but got the third base coach filled now with Guarno, and hopefully we'll have a couple of new managers in the not too distant future. The other thing, as you probably saw if you were looking closely, the Kyson Witherspoon waiver claim that we put in went through. This is a guy 25 years old. Think he could be an interesting guy to add into our organization. Has only pitched 4 games in his career above A ball at the age of 25, but on paper looks like an interesting guy to bring into the organization. Probably not a top of the rotation type starter, but a really good clubhouse guy and a useful back end of the rotation starter if he reaches his full potential. Fly ball tendencies not perfect potentially for Colorado, but we didn't really have to give up anything to bring him on board, so I think it's worth the risk because there's not too much risk involved here. Oh, and one other thing I meant to mention, I did pull one of our young prospects out of the development lab, and we put Andrew Painter, who we just picked up, into the spot. So he's a day behind everybody else, unfortunately, and I think that may mean that in that eighth spot we may not be able to complete a second program. But given that we made the trade to bring Painter on board, and as I talked about, we're potentially going to be investing in him for $10 million for 10 years, over $36 million. Given that we thought he's kind of a bargain right now and he's already 26 years old, felt like it made sense to get him right into the development lab, working on maybe improving his control a bit. Still think there's a chance that if things go well with the development lab and he ends up being a little bit of a late bloomer, that he could be a pretty important pitcher for us going forward. And even in a worst case scenario, we think he's probably a pretty useful major league arm. And the contract we're offering him doesn't have a ton of downside in terms of the numbers involved. The years are a lot, but the dollar values for each year aren't excessive. And we've started getting our arbitration eligible players as well as some minor league free agents signed. Cole Carrig, Luke Little, Adile Amador, Marcelo Meyer, Drew Summers all signed their arbitration contracts. So that leaves us waiting to hear from Braden Nett, Jaden Hill, and Chandler Simpson. Unfortunately, none of the guys that we signed are particularly popular, so we are still not making much, if any, progress as far as our fan interest. And we did get Hill, Nett, and Simpson all signed, so the team's going to look very similar next season to the way it looked this year. We traded away Cerna, as we've noted. We've added Andrew Painter in as a potential starter or bullpen arm for us. Other than that, we're likely to be losing Doyle, Hicks, and Wells. Wells and Doyle, certainly the two most impactful moves there. And I mentioned that the extremely popular Painter did not result in any increase to fan interest when we traded for him, but he has signed the extension, only a slight increase, so a little bit disappointing given how popular he was. We did get Adolfo Pierre. He's the guy who we signed for our high A team. Looking forward to getting him in. And then Josh Bullock, the other guy that we signed, outstanding with development, good with mechanics, and think that he's going to have good relationships with the Hartford team. So a couple of additions there, continuing to spend some time scouting some of the potential international amateur free agents who are out there. So we've spent some time on that. The 1 point fan interest bump from signing Mr. Painter is at least a small move in the right direction, although not particularly substantive. Take a look at that contract now, and as I noted, it could end up being a really good deal for us. 10 years, $36.5 million. Mentioned that it peaked out at $5 million a year in his age 36 season. He wasn't willing when we were negotiating with him to have option years at the end. He was looking for over $40 million in terms of his demand, and given that we think he's a guy that we'd like to build around, didn't really want to mess around too much with the numbers, just wanted to get him signed. Again, I don't think there's a lot of scenarios where this contract really hurts us, and there's probably like a 20-25% chance that Painter becomes a good, solid number 2, number 3 starter type. And if that does happen, as I said earlier, I think this contract could be a great asset for us. So there's certainly risk in any 10-year contract, but the numbers here, even with the 25th highest budget in baseball, aren't particularly scary to me. And as I said, there's a chance that 3 or 4 years from now, the Rockies are really loving this contract if things go well in terms of Painter's development. And award season is underway. We do have a Gold Glove winner. No surprise, Drew Romo with his third consecutive Gold Glove at catcher. Best season of his career this year, a 6.1 WAR. Looking at those fielding statistics, zone rating, very good. Defensive efficiency, ridiculous. Really strong also in terms of his framing runs. So excellent defensive catcher, and he has been a big asset for us. And honestly, the work that Romo has done and the assistance that he's provided to our pitching staff, and the fact that we've got him signed at a decent number. We've got Ezekiel Tovar signed at what were great numbers and now are still good numbers. Jesus Luzardo not making a ton of money. And then a lot of other kind of arbitration eligible guys making decent money. That's kind of part of the reason why I don't really necessarily want to blow things up, because I feel being a team that now with 6 capable starting pitchers, we hope with the addition of Painter, an excellent catcher, a really good shortstop, potential outstanding right fielder, and then some other pieces that we really like. Adile Amador, Chandler Simpson. Most notably, we still have hopes for Charlie Condon. Dean West, talked about him last year. Bullpen arms, a lot of nice lefties. Marcelo Meyer. I feel like even if we were to trade away Nieves and Lopez right now, and maybe even trade away another guy or two, we're not a horrible team. We're probably still close to a 500 team, even if we trade away those guys. So it's not like we're going to be strong contenders to be having a top 3 pick in the draft. And because of that, I feel like there is some talent on this team, and there is some minor league talent that's not that far away. Unless I get blown away with the options, probably going to run things back more or less. The guy we would like to move on from is definitely Ryan Walker. Still a solid, competent major league pitcher, but is a 34-year-old making $6.5 million next year in a middle relief role for us rather than a closer role. Would love to get that contract off the books. As we saw in the last episode, nobody wants to offer anything for him, but he is someone who, as we get closer to the winter meetings, maybe there will be a way to package him and extract a little bit of value, or at least get the contract off our books and save a little money that we might deploy in a way that we prefer. And our Rockies did also have a silver slugger this year. Unfortunately, he's a guy we'll be moving on from, Austin Wells, who's now, of course, extremely popular, so we'll take a hit when he leaves. Had a career year at the age of 30, 299 average, 36 homers, 96 ribbies, 150 WRC plus for the veteran who was the National League Silver Slugger at designated hitter this year. And looking at Wells, 6 years, $25.2 million a year. Given his age, realistically, the way to bring him back would be to trade away the younger and the better Gus Nieves to open up the money to have Wells back. And to me, that just doesn't make a lot of sense. So will probably take a fan interest hit when he moves on, but that's kind of the box that we put ourselves into. And not surprisingly, the lone Gold Glove and the lone Silver Slugger were the only awards won by our Rockies players this year. Taking a look at the big awards, Spencer Arguetti is your American League Cy Young Award winner, 14-8 with a league best 2.65 ERA and 216 strikeouts for the Astros. Bubba Chandler, a guy that we could have picked up if we wanted to trade away Mr. Nieves, got some attention after a 7-4 record with a 2.32 ERA for the Orioles. Still a guy that we may look to explore adding down the line. In the National League, Yamamoto, once again, your Cy Young Award winner, league best 19 wins, 19-4 record with a sub-3 ERA and 230 strikeouts over 211 and two-thirds innings. Yamamoto, now your 25, 28, and 29 NL Cy Young Award winner. Over in the American League, Gunnar Henderson just edges out, or actually tied. We have a Keith Hernandez and Willie Stargell situation in the American League this year. Gunnar Henderson and Nick Kurtz of the Las Vegas A's in a flat-footed tie for your 2029 American League Most Valuable Player Award. I want to say it might have been 79, the year that I was thinking of, where there was the tie over in the National League for the MVP award. So it might be exactly 50 years ago. Gunnar Henderson for the Orioles hit 296, 25 homers, 89 ribbies, stole 20 bases, 7.5 WAR, and he also won a Gold Glove at shortstop, so an outstanding season for the fan favorite. Nick Kurtz, first baseman for your Las Vegas Athletics, led the league with 187 hits, 43 homers, 310 batting average. Also led the league in on-base percentage, slugging, OPS, and WRC+, while putting up a 6 WAR for the A's. In the National League, James Wood of the Washington Nationals, just an incredible hitting profile for the 27-year-old left fielder, 299 average with 40 doubles, 41 homers, 113 ribbies, also scored over 100 runs, 23 out of 23 stealing bases, led the league in slugging percentage, OPS, and WRC+. And the left fielder is now a National League Most Valuable Player. Ezekiel Tovar, our best all-around player, who ended up missing the final 3 weeks of the season and the playoffs with that torn labrum, finished fourth in the voting after his 7 WAR season. Would have been interesting if he had another 3 weeks of action to see where he finished in the balloting, if he had finished up well. Austin Wells and Drew Romo also got Most Valuable Player consideration among our Rockies. And as we get ready for salary arbitration and the beginning of free agency, there's some guys that we're going to waive in DFA to move on from their guaranteed major league contracts next year. Save us a little bit of money, give us a little more financial flexibility. Victor Vodnik was up with us a couple of years ago and actually pitched pretty well. He's actually done extremely well in Albuquerque the last couple of years, but a 30-year-old reliever who's now out of options, don't see any real reason to keep him around. So we're going to waive in DFA Mr. Vodnik and put ourselves in a position where we're not guaranteeing his contract anymore. Another guy that we're going to move on from, Toshimi Masuda, signed him as a minor league free agent a couple years ago. He hit just a $186 for us this past year. Not good defensively. Does have the home run pop over parts of 2 seasons. His 18 homers and 211 at-bats. But he also has struck out 95 times, doesn't walk all that much, basically been a league average offensive player, slightly below replacement level. Don't see the 32-year-old having an important role for us next year, and unfortunately there's not a lot of value for him on the trade market, so we're going to not guarantee him either. And this one, there's one other that I wanted to talk about, but I gotta look and figure out who it was. Yes, the final move that we're going to make was to officially pull the plug on arguably the biggest mistake we've made in this playthrough. With the 4th pick in the 2025 draft, we picked Jamie Arnold out of Florida State. We liked his potential at the time, but we knew that with the low leadership and particularly that low work ethic, reaching that full potential might be an issue. The soon-to-be 26-year-old is now out of option years, hasn't pitched in the majors since 2028, had an ERA of over 10 in 33 2/3 innings in AAA Albuquerque. Going to give up a ton of home runs, poor control, and his stuff is below average. At this point, we're not going to be guaranteeing him a major league contract next year, so we are going to go ahead and waive and DFA him also. So when all was said and done, potentially moving on from the likes of Arnold, Masuda, and Vodnik with those guaranteed contracts, should put us in a situation where we'll have a little bit more money to spend this coming off season, even if a lot of it may end up going just into scouting and player development, unless we do decide to make some interesting trades to get some contracts off the books. And just when we're feeling good about things, Drew Romo has returned from India after seeing a famous guru, and his experience seems to have had a negative impact on him. He learns that life is not all about being the best. He's going to reorder his priorities, and he's not sure if baseball remains the most important thing in his life. I got the opportunity to spend him 7 days, release him, or do nothing. Romo, as we talked about, had the best season of his career this year, just won a 3rd straight Gold Glove Award. It is late November. I think we're going to let him talk about whatever he wants to talk about and do nothing. Give him time to hopefully figure things out. The players are saying it's a toxic atmosphere, but we are obviously hoping that he's going to be able to work through whatever he needs to work through. He still does have that captain personality, at least for the time being. And he's the type of player that we are happy to have as one of the faces of our franchise. And headed now to salary arbitration hearings, as we've talked about, no one eligible. Only question is whether we might want to make a QO to Brenton Doyle. His demand has actually dropped $1 million to $15 million a year over 6 years. I think it's likely that he would accept our offer if we made it to him, given the financial situation that we're in right now, as we've talked about, and the fact that we have potentially Dean West and Chandler Simpson as potential center fielders for us next year. And the hope is that we only need a 1-year bridge at center field until Kevin Roberts Jr., the number 12 prospect in baseball, will hopefully be ready to take over center field for us in 2031. I don't think it makes sense to make that qualifying offer to Brenton Doyle. As much as I'd appreciate the compensatory pick, I think we'll just happily take one compensatory pick when Wells presumably does not accept his qualifying offer. And as expected, Austin Wells did not accept his qualifying offer. We'll sim forward to the start of free agency. Before that, we've got all these guys that we designated for assignment, so we'll put them in AAA, so at least for the time being, they'll remain parts of our system, but we don't have to guarantee them major league contracts. Let's find out who is on the free agent market and whether there are any interesting international free agents for us to consider. As far as the major leaguers, Wells, we knew he was going. Brian Abreu, reliever. Carlos Rodon, the veteran starting pitcher. Mason Miller could certainly be a very interesting arm to add to the bullpen, but 31 years old, fragile, looking for $28 million a year. Pretty expensive for a closer. The veteran Sonny Gray. Ivan Herrera, the catcher. He could be interesting, but again, $25.2 million likely out of our price range. Joan Duran, $27 million for a closer, not going to work for us. Our old buddy Dre Jameson, supposedly looking for $18 million. We felt like he was going to be too expensive for us to retain for the long term, which is part of the reason we traded him away to the Cubs midway through this season. He went 2-2 with a 3.39 ERA for the Cubs. Refresh ourselves with exactly what that deal was. That was the one where we got Luke Little in return, who we hope can be a useful left-handed arm for us for the foreseeable future. Mr. Senga, and then of course Doyle among the top free agents. Doyle back to $16 million a year for 6 years. And now the international free agents. Is there anyone interesting here? There are 5 pitchers was mentioned, and if there was a high-end starting pitcher, that would be the type of thing that might make me more willing to get creative in terms of perhaps getting the likes of Mr. Lopez or maybe even Mr. Nieves off the books. Second baseman Ning King Chu, 23-year-old. Like the personality, looks like a useful bat. He's not all that talented defensively. First baseman Young Ki Zhu, the Polish Prince. That one, I may be ignorant of things like culture and geography and demographics, but don't know that nickname fits. But the soon-to-be 28-year-old first baseman looking for about $20 million a year certainly looks like he could have a pretty interesting major league bat. We'll at least request a scouting report on him, although unless we make some moves, not going to be someone that we could seriously make an offer for. Left-handed pitcher Salvador Ceballos. Starting pitching prospect Jesus Eritzeri, only looking for $2 million. He looks like a borderline useful major league arm. Not particularly interesting, but also not looking for a ton of money. Yoshiaki Morita, outspoken, little less interesting, not great stuff. 29 years old, doesn't throw all that hard, but another guy who's likely looking for just a minor league contract with a major league option. And then Tomoki Tsutsumi, another guy, 26 years old, durable. He might be the most interesting of these 3 potential starting pitchers, but none of them are particularly incredible. So don't necessarily think that there's any true massive impact player for us to go after in free agency this year. We've got a little over 2 weeks until the winter meetings get underway, so we're going to continue exploring our options in the trade market with the guys that we let go, the arbitration eligible players that we signed to a bit less than their expectations, a tiny bit more financial flexibility, about $9 million that we could spend this offseason. Clearly could put some of that into scouting and player development, and we're also going to likely need to boost the draft budget a bit once Wells signs with somebody and we presumably get a compensatory pick for him. So despite all of the moves that we've made, not going to have a ton of financial flexibility. Fortunately, I don't feel like there's anyone that we're definitely incredibly bulled up to go chasing after on the market. Jason Chourio might be an interesting option, though. I can't say I completely understand why he's a free agent at the age of 24. He is out of option years, so I guess similar to some of the decisions we made, they just decided to move on from him. But that could be our outstanding defensive option in center field with a lot of speed. Definitely feel like, although he's fragile physically and the bat is a very marginal-ish major league bat, with that range, that speed, and that price tag, I think we'd rather, and his age even, I think we'd rather have him in the mix than Brenton Doyle. So Chourio certainly a interesting option to consider, and definitely one of the more cost-effective options to consider among the position players who are available. Taking a look at some of the top pitchers on the market, and obviously we've talked about the very high end of the market with some of these outstanding relief pitchers who are available. Garrett Crochet looking for a ton of money. He could obviously help just about any pitching rotation, but don't really know that we've got the money to be playing at the highest ends of the free agent market this year. Braxton Garrett, not looking for a ton of money, but he's wrecked physically. So we've got some decisions to make, and not really a ton of money with which to make those decisions to improve the team. But feels like there's some interesting options out there for us to consider as far as Mr. Chourio, as far as some of the international free agent pitchers that maybe one of those guys could develop into a respectable 4th or 5th starter, certainly a long reliever. So there are some options for us to consider. We do have a hole at DH and a potential hole at center field to fill, although I think that, as we've talked about, we've got some options internally for center field in particular, and filling a hole at DH isn't all that difficult since we can put anybody there. So next time around, we'll move through the winter meetings. We'll continue exploring the free agent market, get ready for the Rule 5 draft, and maybe do some trades. I know that some of you think that I should be more active than I probably had been, but my thought is, if we're going to make some of these trades, we're probably going to get the best value in a few weeks when we get to the winter meetings. And we've gotten to at least see a few more cards, so to speak, and knowing exactly who is on the free agent market at this point. So I don't think the more patient approach has really cost us too much at this point. But if you disagree, always helpful to hear those thoughts. And until our next episode, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.